All right, y'all. So this is my first little demo video for the background. I'm going to go through each of the layers of the composition. We're going to start off with the background and then go, I'm sure the next video will be the middle ground, and then we'll work with the foreground. One thing that I will tell you is to stay with me on these videos, because at the end what I'm going to do is I'll show you a couple of things you can do if you overwork it or make a mistake. So anyway, let's get to this. So one thing I want y'all to see with the background is that, as I said before, my little demonstration going over the instruction video, mainly the background is going to be cool, and it's going to be filled with mainly blue, and then it's going to be filled with gray. And if you look, it's true here, and then as well as this little checkerboard area here. I tried to zoom in on the background so you guys could more see you know, just me working a little bit better. So we've got, these are the colors in your pack that we're going to be using. We're obviously mainly going to be using these two right here. You might have a little incorporation here of the other ones. So what you do is you start out, and these value patterns are already laid out with your black pen. So I'm not going to do this whole thing for you guys, but I am going to do just a little section. So you're going to predominantly work in your darker area right here. And as you're laying down your pointillism, one thing that you're going to not do is like, you know, like I'm holding it at an angle, and I'm just really lightly putting down my dots as I go. And as I go away from this little cast shadow right here, my dots are going to dissipate here. So I'm barely, it's like I'm touching this thing very lightly, tickling it with a feather. I mean, it's just so very light. And then I'm going to build up as I go. So I've got like just a little base foundation of my blue right here. So we had talked a little bit about muting things out and darkening things a little bit, neutralizing some things, and this gray is going to do it. It has this little tone. It's very light as you work, but it's going to give it that depth that you need. So you're going to start just like you did before, and you're going to start in that really dark area. I'm being a little conservative with this, and as you go, just as you did with the blue, you're just going to kind of like fade it out, spread it out a little bit further as you go out. So my color, as you can see, like the final product, it does get a little bit warmer as you go out here. And I'll kind of like move it over here so you can see. You've got kind of an opposite thing with the purple and the yellow happening there. So I'm not going to add just so much yellow there. It's going to be more on my final product whenever I'm actually adding the color that I'm building up. But I'm going to add just little touches of yellow here. I'm not putting a whole lot, but I am starting here and then I'm moving out. So, you know, typically what I would say is, if not always, start with your shaded area and then move out. I'm just sort of fading it out, and I'm leaving white as I come out. It just depends on how you actually shaded yours as to what you want to do. Now, I know I said that you guys are going to be doing pointillism mainly on this thing, but one of the things that I did do, and this has like this ring, this kind of heavier cast shadow ring, and you're probably wondering, well, you know, how did she do that if she's saying to do pointillism? Now, I did go back and I did add this little halo in this little area here. As I went back there, you can take that halo, you can blend it out like that if you want to create, you know, more of a fade. So you sort of outline first, and then you do like more like that as you blend it out right there. If you want to get even darker with it, one thing that you can do is, this is my darker gray right here, so I use my lighter gray there. Now this darker gray, it's pretty darn dark, so you got to be a bit careful with it, but I'll show you. You know, you can see remnants of it right there in that little spot. So if you know, the main thing is, as you're working, and it may be one of those, you may have to come back to this to see if you want to add more depth right there. You can always go back to your background after you've added different things to your layers. So basically that's what I have there. I could add, it just depends on what you want, but you can add more gray if you're wanting that look, or not. So the next little thing we're going to talk about here is, well, if I can find it, the checkerboard. So your checkerboard here, it's kind of similar in nature to what I did with those little stripes in the background. You can see quite a lot of blue there. You can see gray. You can see little patches of yellow as you travel out into the more central areas there. So, so anyway, let's see here. What would be a good spot for me to work? So I'll start right here, and I'm gonna start just with my edges. This is a little bit lighter than what I did in the little striped area right here. There are some kind of heavier areas as you go where the shoes overlap it, so that would be one thing to consider. And also there's some heavier areas right here where that little space of the clouds overlaps that little area. So I'm just, you know, really going with the patterns of value that are already there. And if you want to, you know, with me, I kind of see some things that I need to do as I go. I'm spreading the value out just a little bit. A lot of this value, the heavier stuff, is more in the corners as I go. And then I'm going to just neutralize the brightness a little bit. This really, as you go back in your background, things are not going to be as in focus. Things are going to be more hazy, and that gray is going to give it that look. So I'm adding a bit of gray. I'm just kind of going in between and on top of that blue that I did. All right, and you notice as I work, I do start to mix in a little bit of yellow. One of the reasons why I put yellow on there is that there's such an emphasis of yellow on my shoes and on so many of the other places in the foreground that you would assume that there might be a reflection of some of that warmth in with this, but you know, it's dominated though, if you look at it, by the blue and by the gray. So one of the things that I did, and it was very similar to the way that I handled that little ring that I created when there was a cast shadow, I did on these areas, and like where you have your cast shadows here, if you have like heavier cast shadows under your shoes and stuff like that, I did go and very, very lightly, conservatively outlined some things. And then I went back with my gray to kind of tone down what I just did. You can take that darker gray and use that as well too. If you go a little bit crazy with the outline, you can blend it out a little bit just with some dots and stuff like that. One of the things I did too was I used that this darker gray, and I use that mainly like in my corners. I have it just in some small places here. I'm not so much outlining it in the corners as I'm dotting it because it is really, really dark. And if you feel like you went a little bit too dark, you can always go back and add that gray right there. So I'm going to show you a little bit of this. So I have that here. I did, even on the black, as you can see, I added blue right there. So I pulled, you know, some of the blue in with that. So if you have like an area that's really, really black or dark, still pull blue in with it. So it's going to make this nice Payne's gray, which is a dark bluish gray. Okay, so with that, I'm going to do a middle ground video next.